Hello, and welcome to another edition of BNEWS In Depth. I'm your host, Rich Hosford. It is likely most residents have had interactions with the town clerk's office, the tax collector's office, and maybe even the building department. But what about the assessor's office? It seems less likely unless they knew about specific ways they can potentially get tax relief by taking advantage of programs the office has to offer. That's going to be the focus of this month's show, the working of the Burlington Assessor's Office and the Board of Assessors, and how residents can get certain tax relief programs by working with them. We'll take it in two parts. First, Town Appraiser, Assistant Assessor Paul Tierney, and Board of Assessors Vice Chair Kathy O'Neill will give an overview of the work of the office and current programs residents can utilize. They will also talk about legislation in the works for potential future relief that will be available. In the second part, Mr. Tierney will stick around and we will be joined by Council on Aging Director Marge Yetman about tax breaks available specifically for seniors and the importance of offering such relief to that population. We have a lot to get to, so let's get started. Joined by Town Appraiser Paul Tierney and member of the Board of Assessors Kathy O'Neill, who are going to talk to us about what the office does, what the board does, and some ways that people can get some tax relief every year. Thank you guys for taking some time and joining me today.
You're very welcome.
Thank
Good
you.
to be here.
Can we just start off? For people who don't know, what does the Assessor's Office do? What does the Board of Assessors do? Let's start with you, Paul.
For the assessors, we value all real estate and personal property in town, as well as offer a broad variety of exemptions for residents. That we have a list of them on our website that they can look at and review. There's an application process, there's qualifications, income guidelines, asset guidelines that we have to follow. And once we receive those applications, we rule on them. That's where the Board of Assessors comes in.
Okay. And when you talk about, evaluating all the, different properties in town, how does that sort of fit into the overall functioning of the town government?
Well, by the amount of, I'm not sure. So we value the property,
yeah,
and we divide that into what the town needs to raise, and that produces our tax rate. So the higher your property values are, technically the lower your tax rate would be, and vice versa. Does that make sense?
A little bit. So you think you get a lower rate, but you get a higher valuation.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And you mentioned tax exemptions that are possible, that are out there. Kathy, what are some of the things that people could kind of look to?
So we offer, not just we, it's statewide, each town has them, but we have exemptions for the seniors, for widows, for veterans, and for the blind. And under the senior exemption, people with disabilities could also qualify for that as well. So there's a process, they fill out the applications and they send them in, and if they meet particular guidelines, then they're given exemptions. And speaking of the exemptions, do you want to talk a little bit about how our exemptions compare to other towns, Paul?
Yes, if we, I've looked at a few other towns' websites, and our reimbursement to the citizens of Burlington are very competitive with all towns, all our surrounding towns, so we are giving quite a bit of money to the residents.
And I think in some cases they're even higher.
Correct. Yes, they are.
Than some of the towns. So Burlington does everything they can to be as generous as possible with the groups that I just mentioned. And
what are some of the, I know you mentioned a couple of them, but if somebody's watching this and they think, oh, I fall into one of those categories, what's the process that they should go through to sort of, take advantage of them?
They can email our office. They can give a call. And we have all of the applications in paper form up at the office as well. And each application would be a little bit different depending on what exemption they're applying for. If they fill them out, they're going to have to provide some documentation. And then basically, as I said, if they meet the guidelines, they're going to get their exemption. And the exemption, one of the things that we wanted to talk about today, Rich, was the deferred tax situation.
You're right.
And I'm very excited, and the whole board is, and the assessors, the whole town actually. Ken Gordon is authoring some legislation right now that we're tracking, and I think Paul would know the particulars of it, but it's something that we're very interested in and is going to be very beneficial in the town.
Yes, so this, like Kathy said, Ken Gordon does have some legislation out there that we are tracking. Right now, to qualify for a tax deferral, there's an income guideline of $40,000. This bill that's being proposed will waive the income guidelines, and it's also the money will be held by the state instead of the town, so the town's revenues don't suffer. So it might be a ways out before we finally get to it, but we are looking into it, and hopefully it will pass. And we'd love if the residents in town would take advantage of this tax deferral program, because it is very helpful. I think a lot of residents that I found, I've spoken to, they don't love to do this program because they want to leave their house clean and free to their children without any taxes and such. But we would encourage people to look into this a lot further, and it's a great program.
Now, is this for if someone is facing current financial difficulties?
Correct.
Is that
yes.
sort of the impetus of having this kind of ruling or this sort of statute in place?
Yeah, the program's in place anyway. It's just going to be a little more modification to it, where they would waive the income guidelines.
And it's for seniors.
Correct. You'd have to be over 65 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, Kathy, obviously, people are aware that we have a board of assessors here in town, but I don't know if everybody really understands exactly what it is that you do. Do you mind just sort of giving a little bit of an overview?
Sure. Well, this year in particular was very crazy because of all the COVID and everything going on. There are, in terms of the commercial side of things, people looking for abatements and so forth. It's uncharted territory. So some of the companies are looking to have their values decreased because maybe they weren't occupied. But again, there are guidelines. They have to check into those guidelines and make sure that they meet them. So the Board of Assessors basically meets once or twice a month, depending on what's going on at the time. Primarily, our job is to review the exemptions and the abatements. See what is going on. We try to give each individual an individual look. We want to help people as much as we can, but there are guidelines that we live by. So primarily, that's what we do. We're really focused on the exemptions and helping as many citizens and residents of Burlington as we can. But there is the piece, because Burlington has such a big commercial side to it, that gets very complicated, can involve things at the appellate tax board, and requires a lot more work, conversations, negotiations. We're kept aware of that, although I will say Paul and Jim Doherty, who's on now as a consultant, they have a lot of work to do because the commercial side is so big.
Right.
And we're made aware of that and what's going on, and then we give our input, and we always want to do what's best for the residents. We love the commercial side, we need them. Burlington is the community it is because of the commercial side. But our top priority is the residents who live here. And so that's primarily what the Board of Assessors does. We review what's going on in terms of taxation, evaluations, exemptions, and abatements. And that's what we're here for.
And is it sort of a balancing act between the residential side and the business side? I know, sometimes, there's some companies, especially in the last couple of years with everything that's been going on, have been saying, we're not making as much money as we normally did, but, there's still a tax levy that we want to
that we have to live up to, right. So yes, it's called classification. And the residents pay a certain tax amount, and because Burlington has such a heavy commercial contribution, they always pay a higher tax amount. I think it's 30 or 40%. The town is valued at is it 70%, Paul? And then, but they pay less than the 70% of the levy.
Right.
So that's a huge benefit to the residents of Burlington. There's a big benefit to having the commercial sector that we have. So yeah.
So I know you talked about, some of the, programs that people can get into. What else is, I know you mentioned our State Rep Ken Gordon.
Yes.
Is there anything else kind of in the pipeline or coming down the road that you are looking at?
There are a couple of things. One of the important things, we are going to be presenting a warrant at the May town meeting.
Okay.
We would like to start a, it's called a
It's Disabled and Elderly Tax Fund.
Okay.
So it provides the residents to donate, in addition to their property tax bill, an extra amount of dollars, whether it's any amount over $1. That'll go into a separate fund, and whatever amount town raises, be it $5,000, $6,000, we'll have a pool of applicants that hopefully we can split that money up into help more disabled and elderly people that could use a little more assistance in addition to the exemptions that we already have. So we're putting that forward this year at town meeting.
And I think that's an excellent idea, and I'm sure people will contribute to that. We'll be able to help more seniors.
Right. I mean, I'm guessing this is sort of part of the whole conversation around trying to help seniors who maybe, are looking to stay in town because, they've been here their entire lives or most of their
Exactly.
lives, but, with the housing market, it's maybe looking to get into something a little bit smaller, a little bit more manageable.
Right.
So talk about sort of that dynamic of where we are in Burlington as far as trying to make it easier for our senior population to continue to be residents of Burlington despite kind of rising prices in housing.
Sure. Well, there are a lot of programs in town. I think in terms of the Assessors Department, we're focused primarily on trying to help through the taxation process.
Right.
As a matter of fact, another thing that we're looking into is we are trying to get the requirements for income and assets increased so that more people will qualify for the exemptions. Because right now there are guidelines in place, and we're thinking that it's time for those to be reviewed and hopefully increased, which will allow more people to receive the exemptions, which will help them manage their taxes. So primarily that's what the Board of Assessors and the Assessors are doing right now. We're working hand in hand with Marge from the Council on Aging, and that's what we feel we're doing right now, and very active. There's a lot of things going on with regards to that, as I just mentioned.
We'll be dragging Marge in here right after you guys. So, yeah.
Yes, you will.
Get a little more details for the seniors and
Yes.
exactly how they can take advantage of these different incentives.
We really do. That's why we're here. We really do hope that more people will look into it, particularly the tax deferred program. It's a great program. They can defer their taxes. It will save them thousands. And then it gets paid at some point when the house gets sold. So it gives them a little more relief and hopefully a little more money in their pockets.
Right. So it helps them with a little bit with the day-to-day, and then, like you said, when they sell their house, and
That's right.
obviously houses are selling at a pretty high price right now in town.
That's
so
right.
they probably will be able to cover that expense.
Yes, it would get paid off. That's right. Yeah.
All right.
So.
So, while I have you here, I think every year, the Board of Selectmen does their sort of tax classifications, setting the new rates, and people are, even if the rate doesn't go up, people's taxes do go up a little bit, and usually it comes from the valuation of homes. Talk about just, like in the last 5-10 years, sort of the situation with making those sort of classifications or valuations, I guess would be the right term. What have we seen in town, and how is that done? What's the process that, your office, your board does to come to saying that all right, home values were this one year and now they're this year?
Sure. Well, Paul probably could speak to that better, but I just want to clarify that we don't set the rates. We
Right.
value the town, and then the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, the Board of
sets the
Selectmen
rate.
sets the rates.
Yes. Yeah.
But they base it on the information
They
that
do.
you
They do.
provide.
Yeah, we know the levy. Am I right, Paul? And
Yeah, it's, the town needs a certain amount of money to run. They raise a certain amount of money And like I said earlier, that gets divided by the total taxable value. But to say for your single-family homes, which are quite a few in town, the values are based on prior year sales.
Okay.
So it's all sales market driven. If the price of homes keeps going up, then typically your assessment's going to go up. It's
So while the
basic all
tax
sales.
rate may not,
Yeah.
if the assessment goes up, it's still going to go up.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the
So
rate
it's
itself.
it's just like you mentioned earlier, like a balancing. One of them will go up, typically, the tax rate or the assessment. One of them typically goes up because the levy goes up every year. So you have to meet that levy, and so the values will typically, or the amount that we raise goes up in alliance with the levy.
Right. And since, the start of COVID, it seems like businesses have been hit a little bit hard, but even here in Burlington, from what I've been gathering, not as hard as other places around the country. But the residential side has actually sort of kept on a pretty steady increase.
Definitely.
Which, is a double-edged sword for people. It's good that their valuation goes up. It's bad that their taxes go up.
Right.
But what have we seen in the last couple of years since the beginning of this as far as the business side goes?
I'll just speak what I've seen this year, and it's, I've only been here since January 3rd.
Yeah, I know, you're new. I'm throwing a bunch of questions that we didn't really prepare for, but...
I won't speak to what's happened in prior years, but it's still a pretty strong market out there for the commercial and apartment segment. So it's still it's strong. We're hoping it continues that way. You just really never know. You can't predict the future, unfortunately, but we're cautiously optimistic that our values will hold strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seems like the town has a lot of programs and things going on that will bring in companies that maybe aren't as pandemic problematic as others, with all the life sciences and laboratories and things like
Right.
that. So
Yeah. Well, Burlington's a very desirable location, both residentially and commercially. So we have, all types of commercial entities who are very interested in getting into Burlington, and we're grateful for that. It really has made a huge difference. Burlington can offer so many more programs with no fees that a lot of towns can't do that because they don't have the desirability or the commercial people wanting to move in here the way that they do. So that's a huge benefit.
So I know mostly what we wanted to talk about today was, getting what residents can benefit from, having interactions with your office.
Right.
And we did talk about some of those things, but I went off astray because
Yeah, that's okay.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
Because I'm curious about how things work, and
Right.
and I wanted to find out. But let's just make sure that we hit all the highlights that you wanted to, because I know when you first got in touch, you wanted to have an informational session about
Right.
letting people know what's available,
Right.
because I don't think maybe people are even aware that these programs
Correct,
exist.
yeah.
So I'll go to both of you for this, but just the high tier what do you want people who are watching this to take away from it?
Just that I want them to know that we do have programs in place already to help seniors, to help people their income isn't matching what it used to be, their taxes becoming a burden, that the programs are in place, and if they do have questions, even if they don't think they qualify, it doesn't hurt to call the office, doesn't hurt to email the office, doesn't hurt to stop by the office to find out what you may qualify for, to ease some of that stress and the burdens of your taxes.
Mm-hmm. And we can throw up a graphic on the screen. What's a good phone number or email that they can reach out to you at?
I'd say call the main number at 781-270-1650.
Okay.
Or email assessors@burlington.org. And someone will get back to you promptly and fill you in on all the information that you need.
Excellent.
We're happy to do it.
And Kathy, you mentioned there are other things in the works. What can people look forward to in the future?
Well, to recap, basically, I think it's important that we're tracking the Ken Gordon legislation. which is going to benefit, again, seniors. It's the tax deferral program. He's looking to make some positive changes so it will include more people. Also, that we are investigating the ability to increase the amount of those exemptions so that people will be getting even more back, because that hasn't been done for a while. And primarily for people to, just as Paul said, find out what you're available for, find out what you qualify for, and make the call, fill out the application. And I think people will be surprised to see that there are programs that they do qualify for and may make a big difference for them. We also are talking about we talked about it earlier, the work-off program. Trying to, I think that Marge will probably talk more about that. That's something that, again, it has a lot of benefits to it. And we just really want people to know that these programs are out there. We used to go, as I mentioned earlier, to the senior center. That hasn't happened since COVID. So we're hoping that this is going to be an outlet for people to be able to look at and know that they can make a call, stop by, or email, and we're there to help them. And there are benefits for them.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll put it up there and put
great.
it, just say how you can get some sort of some tax relief here in Burlington through the assessor's office, and I think people will be interested to find out more about it.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
I think that's it for me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking some time coming and talking about this. Again, I think it is something that people are somewhat aware of, but maybe not, fully, have an understanding of. So, you coming in and taking the time to talk through it, I think will be beneficial for our viewers. So I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for
Very
making
welcome.
the time for us. We appreciate it too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now that we have an overview of the assessor's office workings and general programs, let's take a deeper look at what is available for seniors, as Paul and I are joined by COA Director Marge Yetman. I am now back with Burlington Town Appraiser Paul Tierney, and joined now with Council on Aging Director Marge Yetman to talk about some of the benefits that the senior population can get by working through the assessor's office. Both of you, thank you for taking some time.
Very welcome. Happy to be here.
Marge, I want to start with you. What are some of the things that you hear from seniors about how, the rising of home values and, just taxes in general sort of put a pressure on that population?
It puts a lot of pressure on them. It goes up every year, and it goes up more than their fixed incomes do. It goes up more than the Social Security COLA. And so they feel it every year when that goes up. It's one thing they can't buy, in the year coming up. So I do hear about it. Every time the rates go up, we hear them talking about it. And we'll usually get a few people coming in and saying, I just can't pay this anymore.
And I know things have probably been different the last couple of years, but traditionally, what sort of programming do you offer at the senior center as far as information or helping through paperwork, things like that?
So the assessors often comes over and does a presentation every year, pre-COVID, and they can ask questions, and the assessor's available for them to do that. In the last 2 years, it's just been literally the social workers helping them to kind of figure out other ways, figure out what's available to them. Sending them to the assessor's office if it looks like they might be able to get an exemption, and just kind of that. The social workers never stopped doing face-to-face. We've been doing that the entire time.
Yeah, throughout the
we slowed down the visits we were doing in the very beginning, but now but in the last year it's been pretty much the same. If somebody needs help, their social workers are there. So anybody can ask a social worker if they need help with those exemptions.
And do you find a good response, like people coming in and taking advantage of those programs?
No. I wish the exemptions where they don't have to do anything except fill out an application, yes. The tax deferrals where the children have to pay it back after they've passed, they don't like doing that. I think you alluded to that earlier. They want their house to go to their children and not to have any liens on it, which, most of the children would say, Mom, Dad, take the deferral. We'll deal with it later. We don't care. But the the seniors are very much, they want to leave their legacy to their children.
Sure.
And then we also have the tax work-off program, which is, it's been a tough couple of years. It's been kind of dwindling anyway, a little bit. Trying to get, seniors into those schools. We used to have a ton of seniors in the schools doing the tax work-off program. We've had them in the library, we've had them in the town hall, we've had them in the senior center. I think
Here,
we had
BCAT.
somebody at the fire, BCAT, someone at the fire department. But the last 2 years have been tough. We went through, 2.5 months in on 2020, and then everything stopped. Debbie Giardina, who actually runs the program for me, she did everything she could to get work for people. And town hall was sending, envelopes and stuff to people's houses who were working the program. So they got some hours. Some almost got all of their hours, and some didn't really get any. And then last year was the same. We started late, and the seniors weren't comfortable coming back, many of them. We've lost a lot of our volunteers, so they're not, partaking of the program right now. Hopefully that will change in the next year.
Yeah, so obviously it's been difficult for everybody.
Mm-hmm. What I like about the program is that, you're not just giving it to them, right? They're working for it, and I think that gives them a little more dignity in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's also taxed by the federal government, which is unfortunate. They about 15 years ago, they realized that the towns were doing this across the country, and it was like, oh, let's dip our little fingers in there, and so we just.
So they work to get a lower tax, not tax rate, but tax burden, and then the federal government
Yes.
comes in and takes some of that.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Always fun to work with the federal government.
Yeah, it was a fun year when they did that.
Yeah, I imagine everybody was super stoked about that. Paul, just in general, overall, like, what do you kind of view as your sort of your office's sort of mission when it comes to the senior population?
Just the statutory exemption programs that we do have in place, in addition to the disabled and elderly tax relief fund we're going to set up through town meeting this year, where residents can donate, in addition to their primary tax bill, they can donate an extra sum of money to put into a separate fund, so we can hopefully help, however, depending on the amount of money we get, the town collects, we can help as many people as we possibly can. If that's 5, that's 10, I'm not really sure, depending on how much money you get and how many applications we get. But our goal is to promote these products and make sure everyone knows about them.
And if people, when we talked a little about it a little bit in the last segment, but just let's get a little bit more into the details. Like, how does it work? What are people going to see, and how can they contribute, and what sort of ways are they going to know like what it is that they're actually seeing?
So there'll be check boxes on the tax bill with amounts. There'll be a check box with $1 next to it, $5, $10, whatever amount they want to check off. They check off and send in a separate check, and that check goes directly into another taxation fund. So it's a program that'll be run by the Board of Assessors, Town Treasurer, and 3 volunteers from the community, where we'll work with the Council on Aging and Marge. She'll send us some applications. There'll be some guidelines that we'll set up that all 3 boards agree with. There'll be some income limitations, age, asset, and we'll pick from the pool that apply, and see who's the most needy. And depending on how much money we receive from the residents and the number of applicants, hopefully we can divide all that money up and give people a break we feel they deserve.
Okay, so it's going to be a voluntary thing from the residents.
Correct.
But unlike every year I get my tax form for the federal government, and it's like do you want to donate $1 or whatever towards the like election fund or whatever it is. It's a federal program. This is much more close to home.
Correct.
Like this is going to be Burlington residents supporting other Burlington residents.
Exactly, yes.
Local.
Yeah.
Very local.
Yeah.
Very local. So it's going to be, a little bit more maybe impactful for people right here in Burlington.
And there's a lot of people that can't do the work-off program, just physically can't do it, and are quite needy. We still have people that make less than $1,000 in income in Burlington. So those folks would most definitely benefit from a program like that.
And Marge, I know one of the things, we talk about, with the program, the deferred taxes, but they can pay it off when they sell their house. Do you see a lot of people who are in town getting older and then maybe want to stay in town but don't need the big house that they have,
Yes.
and but find it difficult to find something else?
Yeah, that's just a good lead-in for what's going on in town, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, affordable housing and everything is definitely a big topic right now.
Yeah. So there are a lot of folks that are aging in their homes, and they're not in the right type of home to age in place, or they're just finding it too much. They can't mow the lawn anymore. They probably can't afford to have somebody cutting their grass every week or taking care of the lawn maintenance and the snow plowing, all of that. And so a condo or an apartment is really the way to go at that point. And Burlington does have we definitely have a lot of affordable housing. Whether it's affordable to people is another question.
Right. Yeah, there's a difference between affordable housing as a classification and
Right.
then what actually people can afford.
Burlington has gotten expensive, so the affordable housing isn't quite as affordable to a lot of the seniors that are in their 80s and 90s right now. But one of the big problems is asset, right? You sell your house and then you've got this big, you've got all this money sitting in the bank, and they look at you and say, oh, you're not eligible, you've got too much money in the bank. But we are working with Nordblom on
Right.
the affordable housing with them, which won't have that asset test. It'll still have the same financial qualifications, but we're getting rid of that asset test. So when you sell your house, that's not an issue, and that won't count as income that year
Right.
towards the apartment.
So it says, that program will help people who, just because they have been living in a house for a long time and suddenly their neighborhood is just valued way more than what they initially paid for it.
$15,000, back in the 50s, and here they are, talk about, gain. It's hard to downsize and go into an apartment to begin with, and then when you have the financial piece on top of that makes it much more difficult. But I do want to remind people who are watching this, your home, I know people think that they were going to spend the rest of their lives in their homes, and it may not be feasible, but your home is your greatest asset. And for folks of our generation, we look at it as an asset, and that's how you're going to fund that apartment. You may not be able to pay, afford that apartment on a monthly basis, out of your income,
Right.
but your savings of your, when you sell your house for $500,000-$600,000 or more these days, that'll last you a very long time in an apartment that's $1,500 to $2,000 a month.
Right.
So it sounds really daunting, but it's not as daunting if you think of your house as being how you're going to pay for the apartment.
Now, a lot of this sounds pretty complicated. People think about taxes, they think about forms, they think about, like the process of how do I go about doing this? Paul, just talk about the people in your office, how they can work and make, a daunting process much more feasible for people.
Sure. Well, it is pretty daunting for someone that has never done it before. There is information that you do have to provide, whether it be tax returns, bank statements. But that's what the people in my office are for. Walk you through all of that, tell you exactly what you need try to make the process as stress-free as possible. Even though there is a little bit of homework to do to fill out the application and to get your documentation in order. It's a little intimidating at first, but it's very doable. The girls in the office, Maria and Deborah in my office, are excellent, and they'll walk everyone through every small process that they have to make sure that they get the proper information in there to make it as easy as possible for them.
Right.
And we can certainly help with that as well.
Yeah, I was gonna
If
ask,
someone
what
is
the senior
extremely,
center-
yeah, if someone is very overwhelmed with it and just can't gather the paperwork, Brenda or Andrea can help them do that. And we can do a home visit to help if necessary.
Okay, excellent. All right. I mean, I think we've hit sort of like the major points here. I just want to make sure that there's nothing that people who are watching might need to know that we haven't addressed yet.
I think the biggest thing they need to know is to call us.
Yeah.
If you have any question or if you think you need some help, just call us, either office.
All right.
We work
Exactly.
together. We can we'll send people back and forth if necessary.
We put his number up on the screen last time, Marge. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best number to call?
Call the main number, 781-270-1950.
Okay, and always there to help.
Yep, there's always somebody.
All right, excellent. Well, I think that kind of gives a overview for people of what they can take advantage of in a good way, and what's available for them and how to go about doing it. And I think that's important information for people to know, because I don't know that everybody is aware of what's out there. So very much appreciate you taking some time and coming in and sharing this information with our viewers.
You're welcome, and
Absolutely.
thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So there you have it, an in-depth look at the work of the Burlington Assessor's Office and how residents can work with the Office for Tax Relief. We wanted to do this show as a way of letting people know what is out there, because without that information, they may be paying more than they have to. I'd like to thank my guests this month, Town Appraiser Assistant Assessor Paul Tierney, Board of Assessors Vice Chair Kathy O'Neill, and Council on Aging Director Marge Yetman. I'd also like to thank all of you for watching. We'll be back next month with another edition of BNews In Depth, so stay tuned.